Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to estimate square roots by using systematic trial. Systematic trial is a fancy and a bit more precise name for really efficient guessing and checking. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a reasonable guess, and then we'll evaluate that guess and then make a better guess based on what we learned. Okay, so we need the square root of 30. So to start with, we're going to just think like approximately how big this should be, because we don't want to just pick a random number. We're not going to say like, oh, is it 17? We'll try to be a little bit more logical than that. So what we'll do, I'm just going to write it down like this. We'll try to think of some square roots that we know the values of, that it's between. So if you think of what your perfect squares are, the one that's a little bit smaller than 30 is 25. So that means that root 25 is a little bit smaller than root 30. And that, of course, is 5. And then what's the perfect square that's bigger than, the next one that's bigger than 30 is 36. So that means that root 30 is a bit smaller than root 36, which is 6. So that tells us we're going to guess between 5 and 6, okay? Okay, so if I look at, I'm looking at root 30, and I'm comparing it to root 25 and root 36, and maybe I'll notice that 30 is a little bit closer to 25 than it is to 36. So maybe I'll start with a number that's a little bit closer to 5 than to 6. So maybe I'm going to guess, first of all, that the square root of 30 is like 5 3/10. We'll start with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to test 5 3/10. And the way I'm going to do that is by squaring it, or just by multiplying it by itself. Certainly with my students, if I ask to solve by systematic trial, I want to see all the numbers you tested and whether they were too big or too small. That's kind of how I know that you use systematic trial instead of just pressing the square root button, which is a valuable way of finding the square root in certain contexts, but if I ask for this, then this is what I want. Okay, so 5 3/10. Some teachers might want you to do this by hand, in which case just the multiplication will take a little bit longer. I'm fine with a calculator. So that's 28 9/100. So let's just decide, is this, our number is too big or too small? We're looking for it, we want it to be 30 or as close as possible. So this is too small. And it's worth it being really organized in your guessing and checking so it doesn't take you forever to find the right number. So let's go to maybe 5 4/10. So I'm going to multiply 5 4/10, 5 times 5 4/10. So that's 29 16/100, which is again too small. But I'm getting close. So let's try 5 5/10. So that's, this is good, because this one's too big now. So it's 30 25/100. So this is good because now I know that my number is going to be between 5 4/10 and 5 5/10. Now we need a quick little review here, because sometimes people will hesitate. Some people, it's very easy for you to think of a number between these two, but for some people, because of the way that the decimal system works, it might be confusing. So I'm just going to remind you that 5 4/10 is the same as 5 40/100. Those are the same numbers. And 5 5/10 is the same as 5 50/100. Those are the same numbers too. Sorry, this and this are the same numbers. And these two are the same numbers. So it's a lot easier to find a number between those two. If I look at this, I think this is maybe a bit closer to 30 than that one is. So I'm going to guess a number that's a little bit closer to 5 1/2. Maybe I'll start with 5 and maybe 48/100. And different people obviously are going to use different numbers. But you want to be a little bit organized in the way that you choose. So that's 30 and 304 10,000ths. That's really close. So I'm going to write, this is really close, so I'm going to write a bit too big. Just a little bit too big. So let's go just a little bit smaller. Maybe I'll try 5 47/100. That's also really close. So this is a bit too small. Oops. Fix the spelling mistake up here. Okay. For some people it might be obvious which of these numbers is closest, but actually a lot of my students I find make an assumption which is not necessarily right about what's closest. So to be sure here, we can do a little bit of subtraction to figure out what's closest. So we want to know how far is this from 30. This is a bit too big. How much too big is this? This one, I think you can subtract 30 from that in your head. This is too big by 0 and 304/10,000ths. For this one, you might want to use a calculator. You can do 30, subtract that. So 30, take away 29. There. So it's 791/10,000ths by there. So now we can see for sure here which of these two is closer. This is about 8/100ths away from 30, and this is only about 3/100ths away. So this one is the closest. So I think it's good to just circle it, because your final answer here isn't necessarily going to be the last one, so circle the one that you're using. And then we'll just write a quick sentence to answer the question. So the question was estimate the value of the square root of 30 to 2 decimal places by using by systematic triangle. So we'll say to 2 decimal places. Square root of 30 is 5 48/100ths. All right, and if you wanted to be more precise, if you wanted to find it to 3 decimal places, then you'd look for numbers that were between 5 48/100ths and 5 47/100ths. All right, so the most important thing is to be organized and to write down what you're trying. Don't just pound stuff into your calculator and write down the answer, because then someone looking at your work has no idea if you really did use systematic trial. Just write down. It doesn't take very long to write out your list. Okay, good luck. Thanks.